You ever wonder why you can remember the lyrics to a song you haven't heard in 10 years, but you have no idea what you ate for breakfast yesterday? Well, every single second, our brains are just flooded with information. So today, we're going to go on a little journey. We're going to follow a single piece of information as it travels through your mind, and we're going to see how your brain makes that critical decision, what to keep and what to just let go.
So picture this. You're in a biology class. Your teacher, Miss Bishop, flashes this super complex diagram on the screen for just 3 seconds. Poof, gone. She asks what she saw, and a few people mention some boxes, maybe a couple of words. But then she asks, "What did you smell?" And bam! Everyone suddenly remembers the smell of broccoli wafting in from the cafeteria. In just those 3 seconds, their brains took it all in. The picture, the sounds, the smells, just a massive flood of raw data.
And that's the big question, right? How in the world does our brain decide what to hang on to? It obviously can't keep everything. We'd be completely overwhelmed. There has to be some kind of filter, some sorting system for this constant tidal wave of information. And that's the system we are about to map out together.
All right, our journey begins right at the front door, the very first point of contact between the outside world and your mind. We'll call this the sensory gateway.
The map for our entire journey is this classic idea called the information processing model. It's actually pretty simple. It shows information flowing from some kind of external stimulus, like that diagram in Miss Bishop's class, into a temporary holding area called the sensory register. From there, if it's important enough, it moves to our conscious mind, which we'll call working memory, and finally, it might make it into the giant archive of long-term memory.
So, what is this first stop, this sensory register? Well, think of it like a brief, super vivid echo of the world. It holds a ton of data from all your senses, but, and this is the key, it only lasts for a couple of seconds before it just vanishes.
And we know it's that fleeting because of this really clever experiment. A researcher flashed a grid of 12 letters, just like this one, for only 50 milliseconds. When he asked people to recall all the letters, they could usually only name about 4. But here's the cool part. When he cued them to just recall a single row right after it disappeared, they could do it almost perfectly. And that proved it. For a split second, all 12 letters were actually in their brain. They just faded away before people had time to report them all. So how does any piece of information escape this fading echo to get to the next stage? Well, the answer is incredibly simple but also really profound. It's one word: attention. You have to consciously focus on something for it to pass through the gate.
Okay, so let's say a piece of information grabs our attention. It gets past the gatekeeper. It now arrives at the second stop on our journey, this bustling, active, conscious part of our mind. This is our mental workbench.
This is what we call working memory, and you might have heard it called short-term memory. But it's not just for storage. That's why Workbench is such a great name for it. It's active. It pulls in new info from our senses, and it can also grab old files from our long-term memory, so we can work with everything together right here, right now. But here's the catch, and it's a big one. This mental workbench is tiny. Famously tiny. Research has shown again and again that it can only hold about 7 things at once, give or take 2. So we're talking 5 to 9 pieces of information. That's it. This creates a massive bottleneck for learning. If you try to cram too much in, stuff just starts falling off the bench.
Let's make this real. Right now, I'm going to give you a shopping list with 24 items. Try to hold them all in your head. Ready? Flour, orange juice, pepper, mustard, soda pop. It's just impossible, right? You can literally feel your brain hitting a wall. That's your working memory overflowing in real time.
So how do we get around this problem? Well, there's a fantastic little trick called chunking. Instead of trying to remember 24 separate things, what if you just organize them into 3 meaningful groups? Stuff for breakfast, stuff for lunch, and stuff for dinner. All of a sudden, your working memory only has to hold 3 chunks. You've basically hacked its capacity by giving the information some structure.
Now there's one more rule for this workbench. To keep something on it, you have to be actively using it. This is called rehearsal, basically mentally repeating the information. Think about it. You look up a phone number. If you get interrupted for even a second before you dial it, it's gone. That's because you stopped rehearsing it, and it fell right off the bench.
All right, so if a piece of information manages to survive the chaos of that mental workbench through rehearsal and processing, it reaches its final destination. This is the third and final stop on our journey, the mind's vast and what seems to be endless archive.
This, my friends, is long-term memory. Its capacity is, for all practical purposes, infinite, and the information stored in here can last a lifetime. In fact, a lot of scientists believe we don't ever truly forget things from long-term memory. We just lose the ability to find the information when we need it. It's like losing the address.
Now, this massive archive isn't just one giant warehouse. It's actually organized into at least 3 different wings. You have episodic memory, which holds your personal life stories. You have semantic memory for all the facts and general knowledge you've picked up. And you have procedural memory for all your skills. Let's take a quick peek into each one.
First up, episodic memory. This is basically your own personal autobiography. It's the mental movie of all your experiences, all filed away by when and where they happened. Remembering your high school prom? What you had for dinner last night? That's you accessing your episodic memory.
Next is semantic memory. Think of this as your mental encyclopedia or your own personal Google. This is where you store all the facts and general knowledge, like knowing that a bison has horns. And this information isn't just stored randomly. It's all organized into these huge, interconnected webs. The more connections a new fact has to stuff you already know, the easier it's going to be to find it later.
And finally, there's procedural memory. This is your how-to guide. It's all about skills that have become totally automatic. Like riding a bike or typing on a keyboard. You don't have to consciously think about the steps anymore. Your body just knows. This type of memory is so different, it's actually stored in a whole separate part of the brain. So we've completed the journey of information. We've seen the whole path. So what's the big takeaway here? How can we use this map to actually become better learners and remember the things that truly matter to us?
To find the answer, we have to go back to that mental workbench. There's this really powerful idea called the levels of processing theory, and it gives us the key. It basically says that what matters most isn't just repeating something over and over, it's about the depth at which you process it. The more you engage with the actual meaning of an idea, the stronger that memory will be.
This was shown perfectly in a classic experiment. One group of people looked at a list of words and was asked a really shallow question, like, is this word in all caps? The other group was asked a deep, meaning-based question. Is this a living thing or a non-living thing? Guess who remembered way more of the words later on? Yep, the group that processed the meaning. So here it is, the crucial lesson, the secret sauce. If you want to move information from that tiny little workbench into the permanent archive of your mind, don't just mindlessly repeat it. That's shallow processing. Instead, you have to make it meaningful. Connect it to your life, try to explain it to someone else, link it to things you already know and care about. That is deep processing. And that's where our journey ends. Knowing that the real key to a lasting memory is giving information meaning. It leaves us with a pretty important question, doesn't it? What important ideas will you choose to really engage with and process deeply today?